Hi guys, JT here, and today I'll be bringing you some information on the Fanatical Bundle Build Your Own Horror Triple Pack Bundle of October 2022. To help you answer the question, should you buy it? I'll run through 7 games for your consideration. If you want to know more about game bundles, then feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps the channel out. So let's get into this. At number 1, we have Subway Midnight, an abstract horror and mystery game about a weird haunted train. You start out on a dark train and you keep walking forward from one train car to the next. You start finding missing persons flyers, and before long you start encountering these lost souls on the train, presumably victims of a shadowy figure that is following you around the train. This game features a stylized 2D artwork that is cute but in an unsettling world, giving you a false sense of security and unease. You'll be primarily solving puzzles in this game to find items to help ghosts on the train to move on into the afterlife. As you progress, the train carts become more and more surreal, each with their own set piece. On many occasions, the cart may not even feel like a train. The ambient noises and background music that you hear throughout your playthrough gives a truly unique artistic experience. Your interactivity with the environment and puzzles also gradually evolve as you progress through this game, from pressing buttons to more complex puzzles and secondary objectives. Gameplay similarly becomes more bizarre, like in one section you play a first-person horror game within the game to unlock a door in the main game, or another section that requires you to run across a factory assembly line in 3D space but with 2D fixed camera angles. These sections can be quite frustrating as some 3D objects may block the view of your path and obstacles, forcing you to memorize your path. This game features multiple endings, with over 100 carts to go through. You won't go through all the carts in one playthrough, and you don't have to finish the game. In fact, if you know what you're doing, you can finish this game and still get the good ending in a short amount of time. This game gives a creepy and unsettling feeling with no dialogue, but with only text that you can find in the environment. It is supposedly a metaphor for dealing with trauma with its vague story, but it can be a very emotional experience once you get into it. At number 2, we have Janitor Bleeds, a dark mystery horror adventure game. The story goes that you're in a car crash, you get out of your car and travel into the dark forest. You eventually arrive at an abandoned arcade. While exploring the arcade, you find a cabinet called Janitor, and inadvertently release a strange entity upon the darkened screens. You think you would just leave, take flight, and look for help elsewhere besides a creepy abandoned arcade, but you don't. In fact, you decide to keep exploring the arcade, not caring for the fact that something is trying to murder you. This game is linear and relatively short, about an hour to an hour and a half long. There's a strict sequence to things, and as you explore, you continuously encounter the mysterious Janitor arcade game, which you will need to play to unlock the way forward. This is done through a variety of reality-bending puzzles. You're also pursued by the entity, and it will pursue you even as you are trying to solve a puzzle. The problem is that the entity's AI isn't exactly the smartest cookie in the jar. It mostly shows up during specific sequences, then wanders around dumbly until it is needed again. The entity has a hard time navigating the environment, and losing it doesn't take much effort, which is a shame because it would otherwise be even scarier. The Janitor arcade game is not difficult either, usually posing simple puzzles to solve. The narrative has some issues as well, with lazy writing and a lack of deeper motivation for you to stay in the arcade to explore. Like, you could have stayed because maybe you heard a child calling for help in the distance or something. But nope, there is none of that. As to the reason why you're staying, no clue. The background of the arcade is also not fleshed out effectively, which is a shame because its mysterious premise is actually quite interesting. However, if you're looking for a short horror game just to play for the night before going to work or school the next day, this could be a game for you. And number 3, we have Nomad Survival, a 2D auto-attacker bullet hell roguelike, similar to Vampire Survivor. The basic gameplay loop of this game is as follows. You choose your character and slay through droves and droves of monsters, level up, choose new abilities and weapons, continue murdering everything for 30 minutes, then fight the big bad boss to progress to the next level. Your screen will get quite hacked as monsters swarm you, thus it is also like a bullet hell. Each character has their own fun and unique abilities, like the ability to create a damaging shield or summoning the dead who will fight for you. Modifiers in this game keep each run fresh, like doing double damage but you can't heal or having damage done over time. You can even change the game speed if the existing speed isn't hectic enough as it is. There are many more features currently being developed for Nomad Survival, but if you're into murdering tons of monsters through a chaotic landscape with tons of modifiers, then this game is for you. And number 4, we have Savage Halloween, a classic arcade-inspired action platformer, which will remind you of classic games like Contra. It's Halloween, ghosts, ghouls, and the Vampire Lord are partying it up for the night. Not wanting the party to end, the Vampire Lord blocks the portal back to the afterlife. The heroes must defeat him to return home. That's basically the story, just to give you a reason to play as monsters armed with a gun, killing other ghosts and monsters. Considering this game is an action platformer, it doesn't need a deep story. This game features 7 levels, and each level is broken up into 6 stages featuring typical action platforming levels, boss fights, and vehicular chase sections, giving enough diversity to your gameplay to keep you engaged. There's also a variety of enemies that you'll have to shoot with each level, featuring new enemies, keeping you on your toes. There are also bosses in this game, and they are one of the highlights, as they are a challenging test of skills, yet they also follow a pattern, so if you die, it's your fault. Starting out with just an assault rifle, you can collect a multitude of weapons during your playthrough, like the frog launcher, ghost gun, and even explosive chickens. These weapons have limited ammo as opposed to the infinite ammo of your assault rifle. You can choose from 3 different characters. You have Jack, who is a well-balanced pumpkin, Lulu, a tanky werewolf, and Dominica, who is nimble but frail. Each character plays very differently from the other, giving you the opportunity to have a different experience when you replay levels as different characters. You can even bring a second player along in split screen so you can kill ghosts and monsters together, like the good old days of Contra. This game is not easy though, and it will challenge your patience and mastery of each level that you play, and it is definitely more fun with a second player. Savage Halloween is an excellent action platformer that clearly takes inspiration from the great classic action platformer games. And number 5 we have The Cat Lady, a horror adventure game. You play as Susan, and you've just killed yourself, surrendering to your long battle with depression. You wake up in a dreamlike realm, presumably the afterlife. You explore your surroundings a little bit and you meet an old woman called the Queen of Maggots, who seems to hold dominion of this strange world. You plead for death, but the Queen tasks you to hunt down 5 people whom she calls parasites, and you will have immortality until your task is completed. You then wake up in the hospital, which you eventually get out of. Your reality world seems to be mixing with the world in the afterlife, as there are persistent flashes of the netherworld in your reality, and there are unsettling images mixed into the game world. You then meet Mitzi, who is suffering from cancer, and she wants to rent an empty room in your apartment. The story then follows the building of trust between Mitzi and Susan, with long conversations between them as they work together to heal each other. Susan wants to die, but she has been cursed with immortality till her job is completed, while Dixie wants to live, but she has a terminal illness. The themes in this game is very heavy, with subjects that most game developers would shy away from, like suicide, depression, drug addiction, personality disorders, terrorism, among others. You will eventually find these parasites who turn out to be serial killers, cannibals, and stalkers, basically the scums of society. Sequences with these parasites can be both intense and violent, and it is not for the faint of heart. This game is essentially a 2D point-and-click adventure game that will have you collect various things in the environment and then use them at various locations to progress the game. There are also some light puzzles for you to solve and dialogue choices that you can make that will trigger different endings. As you can probably gather by now, this game is not so much about the gameplay but more about the story that it is trying to tell. Mainly the struggles of people living with depression, or with some help from people around them, they can get better and feel less burdened by it. It is by no means a perfect game, but it has a good story and a unique unsettling atmosphere that you have to experience at least once. And number 6 we have Monstrum, a first-person survival horror game that mixes itself with procedurally generated levels, permadeath, and AI-driven predators. The story follows that you wake up on a ship at night, and for some reason there's nobody else around. There are notes strewn around, and being the curious chap that you are, with no memory as to how you got there, you read them. You find that the ship is now full of monsters and you are trapped. You have to find a way to escape the ship and avoid getting murdered by these monsters. Exactly how this ship is infested with monsters is a mystery which you must uncover. As you explore the ship, you'll find notes which will give you further background as to what happened to the ship. Just to make your life hell, the ship is dark all of the time with only some dim lights, your flashlight, glow sticks, and the moonlight to light your way. Or the glowing eyes of specific monsters, which you'll probably be dead anyway if you see them up close. You start by exploring the ship and collecting various random items to hopefully use them to aid you in your escape, while running and hiding from the roaming monsters. Not all items are useful though, so be careful with what you pick up. You could pick up a coffee cup, which will be useful to distract monsters, but not as useful when it comes to cutting locks or chains. When the monsters see you, you better start running, turn off your flashlight, and find a place to hide, as you cannot fight back at all. This ship that you're on is empty besides the rust, darkness, and monsters trying to murder you. When you die, and you will die in this game, you can restart your game. But when you do, you'll find that the ship is now different from the last time you were on board, because the ship is procedurally generated. So each playthrough will be different from the last, giving you some incentive to play this game a few times. If you like a horror game that will get your heart pumping with stalker monsters, then this game will be for you. And number 7 we have DISTRAINT 1 and 2 Double Pack, a psychological horror adventure game. You play as an ambitious young man named Price. In order to secure a partnership in a famous company, McDade, Brunton, and more, you have to seize the property of an elderly woman. But the price of that is your humanity. In DISTRAINT 2, you're now a partner of that leading company, but you're unable to forgive yourself for everything that happened in the first game. DISTRAINT has some horror elements in it, but the game mostly tells a story of coping, forgiveness, and redeeming yourself. It's a good story to play through with a very touching ending. This game is a side-scroller point-and-click adventure game with linear progression. Items are easy to find and solutions to problems are easy to figure out because you can examine various items that will clue you in on what to do with them. Even if you get stuck, if you interact enough with the environment, you won't be stuck for too long. The horror elements that pop up from time to time will make everything around you creepy and strange, accompanied by some loud sound effects, and an entity that will chase you to death. If you touch them, you will die, and the only way to avoid them is by hiding in a closet. DISTRAINT 2 has the addition of puzzles that you must solve from time to time to proceed. Some might surprise you, but once you figure out the mechanics of the puzzles, they are fairly easy to solve. The games aren't very long either, you can beat them in several hours with no replay value besides wanting 100% achievement. These two games offer a great story with some awesome atmospheric visuals and horror shifts that work perfectly for the game. Besides, you're getting two great games for the price of one, so why not? And that's just some information on some games that pop out to me. This bundle is actually very good with some great selection of short indie horror games and experiences. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.